We're inside something's skull. I've trained my entire life for this mission, but nothing could have prepared me for what we found out there. You don't get into the astronaut corps expecting normal. You do it because you crave the edge of understanding the precipice where known science starts to tremble under the weight of something older. We were bound for an asteroid known as 449 Grail, a lopsided chunk of carbon and nickel that hadn't been catalogued before last year. It appeared almost overnight in the 12-4 point of our solar system. That alone was enough to raise eyebrows, but what really got attention was its shape, an early spherical, too smooth in some regions, fractured and pitted in others. Some even said it looked like a fossilized cranium. The surface scans were inconclusive. No active emissions, no atmosphere, just rock. But the density was all wrong, too low for its size. Hollow, maybe. That was the word that stuck in my head like a sliver of ice. Hollow. Our crew was small. Just 5 of us aboard the Magellan. Commander Rios, Dr. Lin Kao, a biologist, Marcel from engineering, Jeremy, our navigator, and me, Lieutenant Drew Halverson. Systems and Eva lead. We were the first humans to land on 449 Grail. At least, that's what we thought. Touchdown was gentle. The asteroid's gravity was negligible, and our retrothrusters kept us steady on descent. We landed inside a vast crater that yawned open like a mouth. The surface beneath our boots wasn't like any regolith I'd trained with. It crunched, but not like rocks. It splintered. There was an odd give to it, almost like stepping on a thin crust of frozen leaves. Beneath that silence, no vibration, no radio echo. Just our own heartbeats and breathing inside the suits. "I don't like this," Marcel said, her voice tinny through the comms. "The walls of the crater look layered." "Sedimentary?" Lynn asked. "More like striated and curved, like ribs." We walked further in, our suit lights cutting long arcs across the interior. The further down we went, the darker it got. Eventually, the walls closed over us completely, forming a tunnel. A cavern. A throat. I don't know who said it first. Maybe me, maybe Jeremy, but the word skull started floating through our conversations like a joke we didn't want to land. We set up the first station at what we thought was the base of the crater. The interior hollow stretched on for at least a kilometer in all directions. Our ground-penetrating radar pinged back echo after echo, some so perfectly spaced they looked artificial. Bones. That was what they reminded me of. Long, dense shadows like vertebrae, structures branching off like the remains of tendons or nerves, and in the center of it all, something spherical, dense, too smooth. "Whatever this is," Lynn said, "it's not natural. It's grown." "You mean it's a fossil?" Commander Rios asked. Lynn shook her head slowly. "Fossils don't shift under you." We froze. She wasn't wrong. Just minutes earlier, the ground beneath our feet had shuddered. A subtle vibration, almost like tectonic tension, but there were no tectonics here, no planetary mass, no heat, no molten core. So where had that tremor come from? I went out on the next EVA with Marcel and Lynn to place sensor pods deeper into the tunnels. We had to crawl at points, our suits scraping against brittle walls that felt too much like the inside of a ribcage. At one point, Lynn turned off her helmet light. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Look." There was a soft glow coming from the rock itself. Bioluminescence, maybe, or phosphorescent minerals. But the patterns weren't random. They pulsed faintly like something breathing. Or dreaming. Back at base, Jeremy was studying the seismic readings. "We've got something. I don't know what it means, but every hour on the dot, there's a vibration. 13 seconds long, not continuous. It pulses." Commander Rios rubbed his temples. "Like what?" "Like a heartbeat." We didn't sleep well that night. I dreamt I was swimming inside something vast. I couldn't see its edges, but I could feel it watching me like I was a parasite in its bloodstream. I kept floating downward until I found a hole, a door. I climbed inside. And that's when I realized the hole was an eye socket. I woke up gasping. My HUD flashed a low oxygen warning, but my tank was full. The COR filters were clean. There was no reason to be short of breath. Except the air felt wrong, denser, like something was pressing in on us. At 300 ship time, the tremor came again. 13 seconds. 5 distinct pulses. Boom, 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 boom. Like something knocking against the walls of its own coffin. Or trying to remember how to wake up. Marcel lost it first. She started screaming that she couldn't breathe, tearing at her suit seals. We restrained her just in time. She was sedated and isolated, but she kept whispering. "It's chewing," she said. "We're between its teeth." We thought she was hallucinating. Stress, isolation, maybe some unseen contaminant. Then we opened the central chamber. It was spherical, perfectly so, 40 meters wide. The walls weren't stone, they were enamel. We were inside a tooth. No, a skull. That's when the pieces started to connect. The crater wasn't a craterate, was a fracture in a jaw. The long tunnel? A nasal passage. And this chamber? The brain case. Except there was something inside it, something not quite dead. We moved closer, flashlights bouncing off the inner shell. At the center was a cocoon of tissue black and slick. It twitched when the light hit it. Not like an inanimate object reacting to heat, but like a thing startled awake. Jeremy backed away. "Nope, no, we're leaving. I'm done." But as he turned, the floor collapsed beneath him. We heard him scream just once before the sound was swallowed by silence. I threw a beacon into the gap, but it never hit the bottom. We scanned the area. The hole wasn't a holate, was a pore, or something like it. Not mechanical, not a tunnel. It had edges that twitched, reacted. "It absorbed him," Lynn said softly. Commander Rios was stone-faced. "We get out, now." But the path we came through was gone. I'm not exaggerating. Where there had been a tunnel, a gentle slope curving back toward the surface, now there was only smooth, unbroken bone. Or something that had become bone. Like it had healed. Sealed. "Maybe we're hallucinating," I offered. "Some kind of gas." "No," Lynn whispered. She was staring at the walls. "It's adapting, reacting. Every movement we make it's adjusting." Rios swore and started scanning for another exit. The sensor pinged something Han opening 100 meters away. We ran toward it, our boots slipping on the curved surface. When we reached the opening, we stopped cold. It was an eye socket. And it blinked. Only it didn't shut like an eyelid. It inverted, pulling back into itself in a spiral of flesh and bone. That's when we knew this thing wasn't dead. Not even dormant. It had been watching us. And now, it was waking up. The eye socket pulsed once like a blink in reverse and, then it dilated. Not like a pupil adjusting to light, but more like a wound reopening. The walls shifted with a moist, stretching noise, revealing a tunnel beyond, fleshy and red-veined, the color of raw muscle. Commander Rios raised his arm. "We go, now." None of us wanted to step into that passage, but staying put was worse. The chamber we'd just exited had started changing, walls thickening, angles smoothing out into curved bone. The air pressure was rising. Our suits compensated, but only just. "I can't get Jeremy on comms," I said, more to myself than to the others. Not even a static ping. "He's gone," Lynn whispered. "This thing, it absorbed him." Marcel was still sedated in the habitat module. I wondered what she would have said if she were awake. Probably something about teeth, about being digested. We carried her between us and moved into the new tunnel. I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't moving through the thing, but deeper into it. The walls pulsed in slow, rhythmic patterns, and our footsteps squelched with every step. At some point, the rock and bone beneath us transitioned into something softer, pliable, organic. That's when the smell hit us. Like rotting seaweed and burnt hair, dense and coppery, the stink of something ancient trying to remember how to rot. Lynn gagged inside her helmet. My filters were working overtime, but nothing could fully scrub it. Still, we pushed forward. After an hour, the tunnel opened into another chamber, this one smaller, roughly ovoid. The walls shimmered, slick with moisture, and here and there, strange nodules protruded like swollen lymph nodes. One of them twitched when we passed it. Just a little, like it recognized us. We set Marcel down. She stirred and blinked, groggy but conscious. "Are we out?" she murmured. "Not yet," I said. "But we're moving." She looked around, her eyes widened. "No, you didn't go deeper, did you?" "What do you mean?" Rios asked. Marcel's mouth trembled. "We're in its inner ear." "What?" I turned to her. She pointed at the walls. "Look at the curvature, the moisture. We're inside a cochlea. Don't you feel it?" I paused. Beneath the rhythmic pulses of pressure, there was something else. A low, oscillating hum barely audible, just below the threshold of hearing. Lynn's eyes widened. "It's listening." Marcel nodded. "And now it knows we're here." Rios had had enough. We find a way out. No more speculation. But we were all thinking the same thing. This asteroid, this thing, wasn't just a fossilized remnant. It was a creature. A vast, incomprehensible organism that had somehow drifted into our system. And we were wandering through its nervous system. We picked a direction and moved. There was no way to map our path compasses spun uselessly, and the tunnels changed behind us, closing off or branching differently when we looked back. We left glow markers, but they vanished after a few minutes, swallowed into the walls like nutrients. Still, we pressed on. We reached another chamber, this one dry. Its floor was textured like sandpaper, the walls lined with what looked like dense, blackened vines. But when Lynn touched one, it retracted. "Nerves, or tendrils." In the center of the room stood an obelisk. It wasn't made of bone or tissue, it was metallic, almost crystalline. Maybe 10 feet tall, smooth on one side, jagged on the other. The strangest part was that it seemed familiar, as if I'd seen it in a dream. "It's artificial," Lynn breathed. "This wasn't grown, it was placed." "By who?" Rios asked. Marcel was shaking now. "We're not the first." We all turned to her. She pointed at the obelisk. "It's a marker, a warning, or a control node." "You're guessing," I said. She looked at me, eyes wide. "No, I remember it." The silence that followed was suffocating. "You remember it?" Rios asked. "I've seen it," she whispered. "In my dreams, every night since we landed." Rios approached the obelisk cautiously and scanned it. No readable energy, no signals, just sitting here. Then Lynn did something none of us expected. She touched it. The obelisk lit up. Lines of pale light spidered out across the floor, up the walls, and into the ceiling. The air grew warmer, heavier. The hum intensified until we all clutched our helmets, groaning. And then the lights shifted. They formed Shapa symbols flickering against the bone-white walls, like a language struggling to pronounce itself. "This is a memory," Lynn gasped. "We're inside its memory." The symbols rippled and reformed. This time, they made sense. A spiral, a star, a broken planet, and then a figure. Not human. Tall, thin, a skull like an elongated mask, black eyes. It stood before the obelisk hands raised. Then came the final image, that same figure being consumed, its body folded inside out, devoured by the chamber itself. The obelisk dimmed. We stood in silence. "They tried to use it," Marcel whispered. "Control it, but it didn't want to be used." Lynn was trembling. "We need to leave." We backtracked the way we came, but the tunnel was gone. Again. This time, something else had opened a vertical shaft, slick and deep. We heard it before we saw it. Breathing. Not mechanical, not air, but the kind of breathing you hear when something enormous dreams. A deep, wet inhalation. Then footsteps. They echoed faintly from below. But they weren't ours, and they weren't human. We backed away, but it was too late. Something was coming up the shaft. At first, it looked like a shadow, then a limb, then a face, but not one that belonged to any species I knew. Its skin was translucent, stretched tight over twitching muscle. Its mouth was vertical, splitting its face like a wound, and its eyesif, they were just black pits that seemed to drink the light. It didn't linger. It stared. It studied. Then it spoke. Not in words, but in thoughts. Each of us heard it differently, but the meaning was the same. You do not belong here. Rios raised his weapon. We're leaving. Move aside. The thing tilted its head, and then it opened. Its body split like wet paper, unfurling into a swarm of tendrils that writhed across the walls and floor, sealing every exit. Marcella screamed. Lynn collapsed. But the voice continued inside our minds. You are parasites. You are noise. I shouted back. We didn't mean to. This was an accident. We didn't know. Silence. Then, you woke it. The floor beneath us convulsed, a rolling, undulating shift. We weren't just in its body now. We were in its mind. And something in that mind had turned its gaze upon us. It's strange how your perception of time warps under fear. Seconds stretch into hours. The sound of your own breathing becomes deafening. All I could hear was the pounding of my heart and something else beneath it. A deeper rhythm, ancient and unyielding. The creaturino, the guardian, as I started to think of, it stood between us and the shaft. It hadn't attacked, not physically, but the way it looked at us, through us made my skin crawl. As if we weren't individuals, just bacteria clustered in a nerve. Wake it, Rios said, clutching his helmet. Wake what? The answer didn't come in words, but sensation. The walls of the chamber began to pulsate in steady heartbeats now, but erratic, faster, unpredictable. The hum intensified, then broke into a wail and resonant, like a dying star screaming across dimensions. We were inside something intelligent, something alive, but now it was becoming aware. Marcel grabbed my arm. If it fully wakes, we're dead. We're more than dead, we're erased. Why? I asked, but I wasn't sure if I wanted the answer. Lynn had crawled toward the obelisk again. The being that made this marker, whoever they were, they tried to suppress it, to keep it dreaming, not dead, dormant. I looked back at the Guardian. It hadn't moved, but the way it shimmered, the way its body twisted impossibly at the edges, reminded me of something struggling to hold form in a reality it didn't quite belong to. Let us go, I said aloud. We'll leave, seal this place behind us. The Guardian tilted its head, and then something in the wall peeled open like a petal, revealing a dark corridor beyond, blacker than the void, no lights, no signs. Just escape. We didn't question it. Not then. Rios led the way, Lynn and I carrying Marcel between us. We didn't look back. The corridor swallowed us. I lost track of time in that tunnel. It bent in ways that didn't make sense. My HUD started flashing nonsensical data altitude shifts in zero gravity, blood oxygen readings for multiple heartbeats inside a single body. I shut it off. I had to. The only sound was our own breathing and the very occasional twitch in the walls, as though the thing we were inside was now listening more closely. Waiting. We emerged into a new chamber. Unlike the others, this one was dry, sterile. The walls here were smooth obsidian, reflecting our faces back at us but wrong, skewed, older. I saw a version of myself with sunken eyes, pale skin, lips stretched into a voiceless scream. Marcel gasped. These aren't reflections. No, Lynn said. They're echoes, of other visitors, other minds. There were hundreds of them. Each wall held thousands of faint, mirrored faces. Most were alien, some insectoid, others crystalline, a few eerily human but twisted, warped, empty-eyed. And then I saw Jeremy. Not in the wall, but at the far end of the chamber. He was standing there, motionless. Jeremy, I called, stumbling forward. Rios grabbed my arm. Wait? But it was too late. I ran. As I got closer, I knew something was wrong. Jeremy's suit was intact, but he wasn't moving. His helmet light flickered, sputtered, and then I saw his face. Not asleep. Not dead. Vacant. As if his soul had been scooped out and replaced with an echo. I stepped back. His head turned slowly. His lips moved, but no sound came. Then, all at once, the mirrored walls lit up. Every face spoke in unison. voices overlapping in a tidal wave of language, some guttural, some melodic, others like static churning in a meat grinder. But one phrase broke through, repeated again and again. "You are the infection." Marcel collapsed. Lynn dropped to her knees, sobbing. Rios stared at Jeremy's hollow face. "It's showing us what it thinks we are." I turned. "This thing, we woke it. We activated something. Maybe a defense system, maybe a judgment," Marcel said hoarsely. "It doesn't understand the difference between explorers and invaders. To it, we're just noise inside its skull." Lynn stood suddenly. "We can't leave." "What?" She pointed at the walls. "We can't leave. Not unless it allows us. Not unless we prove we're not a threat." Marcel scoffed. "We're inside a god. What, you want to reason with it?" "No," Lynn said. "I want to resonate with it." That was the first twist. See, Lynn wasn't just a biologist. She'd spent years studying neuroacoustic show brain patterns respond to external frequencies. What if, she said, the obelisks were tuning forks? Devices left behind to synchronize minds with this entity's consciousness? Not control, but calm. A lullaby for giants. She opened her field kit and pulled out a resonance scanner. With trembling hands, she calibrated it to match the bass hum of the skull's interior. As she worked, the faces in the mirror began to stir. They blinked, twitched. One of them mind-smiled without lips. The Guardian appeared again, stepping out of the wall like it had always been part of it, watching, silent. Lynn began the sequence. At first, nothing happened. Then the hum in the chamber shifted just slightly. The walls pulsed slower, the faces stilled. Then the Guardian moved closer. Lynn's scanner chirped feedback error. The signal was being rejected. She adjusted the frequency again. This time, the obelisk in her hand began to glow. Marcel cried out, "It's working!" But then, the floor split open. Not violently, not with force, with intention. A slit formed beneath Lynn's feet, like a mouth slowly parting. "No!" I shouted, lunging to pull her back. The Guardian raised one arm and we froze. Lynn looked at us. She smiled. "It's not angry," she said. "It's curious." Then she was gone, swallowed whole, as if she had never existed. The Guardian tilted its head again, and for the first time, I felt something from it. Not anger, not fear, something like sadness. And then, silence. The mirrored faces dimmed. The hum faded. The chamber's color changed, subtle, but warmer. Marcel knelt and whispered. She did it. Rios helped her up. Then let's go before it changes its mind. The walls peeled away, not violently, but like layers of sleep being lifted. One by one, the corridors reappeared, the path behind us uncoiling like a spiral undone. We carried what gear we had left, though our suits were barely functioning. As we moved, we noticed something else. The walls weren't watching us anymore. They were guiding us. The tunnels no longer pulsed with hostility. Their rhythm had changed less, like something dreaming in pain, and more like something slowly returning to rest. The soft biological hum persisted, but there was no longer menace in it, just a presence. It wanted us to leave, and it was showing us the way. We moved as quickly as we could, though exhaustion gripped every one of us. Our suits were heavy, the oxygen reserves low. Every breath was shallow now, recycled too many times. As we retraced our path, though path was a generous word, we came upon the chamber where we'd first found the obelisk. Except this time, the obelisk was gone. In its place was something else. A figure. Not the Guardian, but a second entity. Smaller, thinner. More like the being from the memory projection, the one who'd tried to control or contain the skull creature. It looked like a shadow burned into the wall, a silhouette trapped in time. And it moved when we looked at it. Not threateningly, just shifting, observing. Its head turned slightly toward Marcel, who stood frozen. Then it reached out, not physically, but mentally. We all felt it, a soft pulse in our skulls, like pressure equalizing in an airplane cabin. Marcel's knees buckled. I caught her before she fell, but her eyes were wide, staring into nothing. "I can see her," she whispered. "Lynn, she's still here." "What do you mean?" Rios asked. "She's not dead, not in the way we understand it. Her mind is spread out, carried through this thing's memory. She's part of it now." The figure stepped back into the wall and dissolved. We kept moving. When we reached the original descent chamber, the crater we had come through was no longer sealed. The jaw, or whatever it had been, had split open again, letting in the faint shimmer of distant starlight and solar reflection. The ship was there just as we had left it, though. It now sat perched on bone instead of rock. The Magellan was intact, scarred, but functional. Rios and I rushed to the hatch while Marcel brought up the rear. We launched within the hour. The ascent was surreal. No resistance, no interference. The asteroid that Impossible Skull made, no effort to stop us. It had allowed us to enter, and now it allowed us to leave. But as we broke free of its gravity, I looked back. 449 Grail was no longer a misshapen lump of rock. It had changed. Smoothed. Symmetrical. Like a vast white head half buried in space, turned just slightly toward the sun. And something on the surface moved. A ripple. A twitch of acknowledgement. Or warning. Rios turned the ship and set course for Earth orbit. I sat in the observation bubble, staring back at the shrinking shape of the skull, thinking of Linno scattered across neurons older than Earth. Thinking of Jeremy, of the faces in the wall, of the guardian that never chased us but watched silently, like a shepherd who knew we were already lost. Marcel joined me an hour later, pale but lucid. "I think Lynn bought us our lives," she said. "That signal the harmony she played it convinced the skull we were harmless, temporary." "You think we're safe?" I asked. Marcel looked out the window. Then she said the words that have haunted me ever since. "No, I think it let us go because we're irrelevant." I turned to her, confused. She continued, slowly, as though hearing the thought for the first time herself. "I don't think we woke it up. I think we were inside something that was already waking up. We were like a twitch in its sleep, a muscle spasm. It didn't care about us because we weren't worth caring about." I thought of Jeremiah raised in seconds, of Lynn, chosen because she resonated, of the others, the visitors before, strapped in mirrored walls. "What is it?" I whispered. Marcel shook her head. "Not a creature, not a god. It's a memory that learned how to keep dreaming." We returned to Earth. Debriefing took weeks. They didn't believe us, of course know all of it. The scans we brought back were erratic, corrupted by interference. The footage was patchy. The obelisk, the guardian, the mirrored wall saw absent from the telemetry. But the one thing they couldn't ignore? 449 Grail was gone. Not destroyed, not drifting. Simply missing. No trajectory, no debris, as though it had never been there. But sometimes, on silent nights, when the air is too still and the stars seem to pulse, I remember what it felt like to be inside something else's skull. To hear it thinking. And I wonder if maybe it didn't disappear. Maybe it just blinked. Maybe it's still out there. And maybe one day, it'll wake up again. Only this time, it might remember us.